Measuring segments, our objective is to use length and midpoint of a segment. Why learn this? You can measure a segment to calculate the distance between two locations. Now, keep in mind, the distance between any 2 points is always positive. Think absolute value. Let's look at an example. DC. So to go from D to C, you've gone a half, 1, 2, so 2.5. Alright, well how about EF? We're over here in the negatives, but remember, you can't go a negative distance. You've gone somewhere. So 1, 2, 3. Alright, well let's talk about congruent segments. They are segments that have the same length. Tick marks are used to show that segments are congruent. 1 tick mark and 1 tick mark means that these two segments, in this case PQ and RS, are congruent. Well, if we had two other segments, let's say AB and CD, well, maybe those two are congruent, but we wouldn't use 1 tick mark because that would mean all 4 of them are congruent. So we'd want to represent that they're a little bit different. So AB and CD are congruent, and PQ and RS are congruent. Let's look at the segment addition postulate. If B is between A and C, then if you add AB together and then you add BC together, you'll get your total. So one of the little pieces plus one of the little pieces will give you the whole thing. Let's try some examples. B is between A and C. So let's draw that first so we have that. So we have B is between A and C. So we've got A, and B is in the middle, and C. Alright, now we have AC equals 14. So this whole figure is 14. And BC is 11.4. Well, it's asking us to find AB. Well, if the two little pieces, if you add them together, give you the total, you can simply subtract to find AB. So 14 minus 11.4, 14 minus 11.4 gives us 2.6. Alright, well this one's a little bit more challenging. They weren't as nice and just gave us simple numbers or decimals. We've got some variables in here, but the same thing applies. One piece plus the other is going to equal your total. So you'll have 2x plus 7 plus your 28 is going to equal 4x. And now we can just use algebra. So if we simplify the left-hand side, we end up with 2x plus 35 equals 4x. And now we can subtract 2x from both sides. And that will give us 35 equals 2x. And then we can divide by 2 on both sides to get x all by its lonesome. And when we do so, we end up with 17.5. However, the question was asking for the measure of RT. So we're not quite done yet. All we have is x. Well, RT is this whole segment here. So we're going to use our 4x and substitute 17.5. So 4 times 17.5 will give us 70. So 70 units. The midpoint of a segment is the point that bisects or divides the segment into two congruent segments. So it takes what we were just doing here and makes it a little bit more specific. So if you had a segment, the midpoint, say this is your midpoint, it's going to divide this segment into two congruent segments. So the little segment on the left and the right will be the same. Let's look at a real-world application. The map shows the route for a race. You are 365 meters from drink station R and 2 kilometers from drink station S. The first aid station is located at the midpoint of the 2 drink stations. How far are you from the first aid station? Take a moment and use what you know and what you have learned to try and answer this question. Well, to start off with, we can use XR plus RS equals our total. So we have XR plus RS equals the total of XS. So this piece plus this one equals the grand total. And we do need to be careful because this one's in meters and this one's in kilometers. So 2 kilometers, if you recall back to a previous course, would state that, well, 2 kilometers is really 2,000 meters. So when we substitute, we're going to use that 2,000 meters. So we have 365 to be substituted in for XR. We don't know what RS is, and we know what XS is, which is 2,000. This leaves us with the fact that RS must be 1,635. So from this water or trash can to this one here, or drink station rather, sorry, we have 1,600, so 1,635 meters. We're trying to figure out how far you are from to the first aid station. So our question is to here. Well, we know what XR is, but we need to know what RY is. Well, if RS is 1,635 and Y is directly in the middle of R and S, we can take half of that to find RY. So if we take our 1,635 and divide that by 2, that's going to give us our RY, which happens to be 817.5. Okay, well, we're almost there. We have our 817.5, and we want to know how far it is from X to Y. So we're simply going to just add those two numbers together. So we'll have our 365 plus our 817.5, and that will give us 1,182.5 meters from the first aid station. And that concludes our lesson on measuring segments.